Hey everyone, this is going to be the next update for the Ritualist Lifestacker build. This is going to be essentially the Uber version with pretty much every gear slot maxed out. This is, at this point, got a lot of mirrors invested into the build, and obviously this is more of a showcase than an actual build guide, but for those that you are following the latest build, the last build, you'll be able to see sort of the upgrades that I've made in order to get it to this point. There's a couple things we have changed. You'll notice that the movement speed is slightly slower than the last video. We've managed to squeeze in a headhunter and made a couple of other nice changes without sacrificing a couple of points, but it's still in the range of 145 to 165, and it can go even higher than that with the conditionals for the headhunter as well. The rarity is now at 385. And you'll see some of the upgrades I've gotten for that. So 385, and then it's about 400 with the cowl, but that only lasts for like a second anyway. We now have almost 2 or 3 times the projectile speed, which you'll notice in the gameplay above. And we have explosions to the build, and I'll be getting into all that with the rest of. Alright, the first thing I want to talk about here is the spark skill and kind of the changes that we've made in terms of the supports, and you'll notice that the DPS number is a little bit lower as well. So what we've actually done is we have put in the Palm of the Dreamer into the build. Now this essentially cuts out our plus 7 or 8 from our wand, and it allows us to have explosions. So if I had a plus 7 wand in here, I probably have closer to 3 mil tooltip, but instead I've opted to go Palm of the Dreamer for the explosions, and this is essentially just because the damage isn't needed at this point in the game. Everything can die pretty much instantly. You saw it in the showcase at the start, Xesht dies still relatively quickly, and it's just not needed to have those multiple amounts of DPS. So instead I focused on more clearing rather than having that higher DPS with the wands. But if you still want to do that, that is absolutely okay. This is just what I've done for my preference. Now, I wouldn't suggest you do this unless you probably have around 600k, maybe 650k DPS. But you could try earlier than that. This is when I sort of felt like a difference. But if you've got the higher numbers, closer to 1 million DPS, you'll be absolutely fine with it. The first thing that you'll notice is we've changed projectile acceleration to this one here for a Valenta's propulsion. And this essentially gives us double the projectile speed. So it says increases and reductions to cast speed also apply to proj speed for skills. This gives us no tooltip. You'll see when we had this one in, we had about 200k more. This gives us no tooltip, but it does actually change the proj speed. So with this one on, I have 116, and this one I have 136, and you're probably thinking, that's only 20% more, that doesn't seem really worth it. When you get into the actual maps and your Arcane Surge is proccing, you're getting your Headhunter buffs, this projectile speed modifier, I've seen it as high as like 220. So it essentially doubles the proj speed of the map, and it just feels really nice. You basically off-screen everything, and it is definitely worth it. If you are struggling with the DPS, and you cannot get it to a higher amount, you just use projectile acceleration. That is absolutely okay. This is just something to try out if you have the damage for at the end. You don't need the extra Pierce. We still have Pierce on our Heart of the Well, which has a couple of little sparks going through, but because we have those explosions now, Pierce isn't as necessary as it was before. Okay, the next thing I want to showcase is some of the passive tree changes we've made. So there's a little bit of extra things with the pathing we've done, and it's mainly towards the bottom of the tree here. So we're actually now pathing to momentum, and we're pathing to spray and pray as well. So this here is essentially a couple of extra points. You have 3 here, and then you have to get these 2 not so great ones here as well. But it does free up a dual slot for us, and I'll show you why we actually free up that dual slot in a second. The spray and pray over here is just very, very nice. This is actually, I think, bugged at the moment. So it says accuracy rating while moving, attack damage while moving. It specifically says with attack damage that spells are not attacks. And when I am moving, you'll notice my tooltip goes up. And if I unspec it, you will see that it doesn't. So this is probably a bug, and I don't understand why it is registering like that. It must be just something wrong with the node for now, but it does actually give that damage. So it is really, really worth it for our build. And it allows that reduced movement speed to go, I think it's around 80% at this point with all the passives and the 10% of the boots as well, which feels extremely nice. So basically when you're in maps, you barely notice a difference when you just hold it down. So it is something that is really worth getting, and it just feels absolutely amazing for the build. Now, freeing up this dual socket. So again, we're taking these extra points, freeing up the dual socket so we can basically drop from nothing, and we are getting this one here, this Time Lost Emerald. So this is actually kind of crazy. So it's not new. This isn't something I've found. This is I think a few other people have found it, and it's just come to the build at this point. But essentially what happens is it says this one here, this increased effect of notable passive skills in radius. And if you get it to 25%, along with a notable passive skills in radius also grant 1 move speed, it puts the escape velocity, so it starts at 3, you get +1 from the movement speed, and then 25% of 4 is 1. So you actually get 5% move speed for this node here. So that's giving you 2% move speed there. You're also getting the 1% movement speed on cooked and the 1% movement speed on freedom of movement with the notables. And they are also getting buffed for 25%. So for cooked, for instance, it goes from 60 to 75. You're also getting another 2% reduced movement speed from freedom of movement. And then your third option is just whatever you want. Increased projectile speed is probably the best, but there's also increased shock magnitude. There's increased projectile damage, which is decent as well. And I think there was another one, I'm not 100% sure. And that will give you a little bit. So I've got 9% proj speed as well, which is very nice for the build. So this is, I think, definitely worth it if you can get your hands on one and you have the levels to actually power through here and grab all that. But that's the main kind of changes. All right, the next thing we're going to talk about is the gear upgrades. And this has probably been the most significant amount of change with the build. And a lot of this stuff is just going to be quite expensive at this point and definitely is not needed in order for the build to function. Again, this is the updated version. I've had about 2 weeks to just grind and make a bunch of currency and kind of get it to this point. And it's just to showcase for people who are getting to that stage what you can kind of do for those little min-maxy upgrades at the end. So first things first is the Palm of the Dreamer. This is obviously a great addition with the explosions, but it does give you quite a few other things as well. You get attributes, so it goes from 7 to 13 attributes. You get increased skill effect duration. That goes from -13 to +13, so trying to get a decent one of that. You get the damages extra chaos, and obviously you get the Dreaming Gloom Shrine, which is those explosions. Now, you are not making use of the Spirit. That is okay. We don't really care too much about that. It doesn't really matter for this build. Also, though, you get Impurity, which is this implicit here, Impurity, and it gives you an aura which grants 27 Chaos Res, which is very nice for, obviously, our build. And then you can actually put these supports essentially for free in the build. So +1 Chaos, it just gives you like 1 more Chaos Res. Mysticism gives you 40 spell damage, and even though you don't have Spirit, it does still work. Vitality gives 2% of life regen, and Cannibalism 2% of life recovered on kill. So absolutely insane utility from that, and it's very, very effective. You can also get a socket which has, well, you can only really add strength or into it. I have a 2-socket one here, absolutely not necessary. Again, it's min-maxed, so that is why I've done that, but you definitely do not need that. So if you do want to try it out, it is worth it. I think they're going for about 100 divines, maybe a little bit less at the moment, but it is great for the build. Next thing, we have squeezed in the Headhunter. I think this is absolutely amazing for the build. If you don't mind the teleporting around, because you clear so fast, you kill so many rares, you get all the modifiers. It helps with tankiness, it helps with speed as well, and it kind of essentially counters the 20% move speed you lost on the other belt with just the conditional buffs, and you get all the other stuff that Headhunter gives as well as some extra life. So great addition to the build, and I'm glad that I'm using it at this point. Okay, they are the basic stuff, not too expensive. Now we're going to get into some more insane pieces of gear, and this is really not fun to try and make yourself, but yeah, we did it in the end. So the first one here is the ring here. I have corrupted them now. So this one here has +15 int, and this one here has the increased crit bonus, which is absolutely amazing for the build. So from what I was looking at, the best ones you can get are probably crit bonus and then obviously rarity. There is a couple of others. Increased damage is okay, but because we have so much increase from the Wrath Pith, it doesn't really apply too much. But yeah, bonus, some sort of attribute, so int or strength, and rarity is the best ones for that one. And don't forget, this does scale with your ascendancy. So 20 crit bonus here is going to 25 from that 25% from the Ritualist. And then I'm mirroring it. So I'm getting 50 crit bonus from this ring here, which is absolutely crazy for a corruption. I spent 5 attempts corrupting this one. So they're about 200 divines to either make or buy with decent tier 1, maybe a tier 2 roll in there. And then you obviously corrupt it. I'm pretty sure it's a 50-50 to either brick or give you an enchant. I bricked like 4 in a row, and it was very upsetting because it cost me like 1,000 divines, and then I hit this one. So very, very high risk. Sorry, costs a lot, but you get some great rewards from it. I also hit one with mana, which I sold, and then I waited a few days and I started trying to do this one, and again, probably bricked about 4. But I've had a mate who did it and he got lucky on his first 2. I would not suggest doing this. It's not fun, and it does cost a lot of divines, and it does hurt when you start deleting that much currency. I just didn't really have anything else to spend on the build, so that's why I went for the corruption path for that. So that's the rings. If you want to do it, if you have nothing else to buy, go for it. All right, the next thing is the amulet, and I got extremely lucky with this amulet. So I basically found out that, I don't know why it just slipped my mind, but you can get rarity as a prefix on amulets. I don't know why we had spell damage before. I guess I didn't really think about it. But yeah, you can get rarity. So I picked this one up unsanctified with all tier 1 rolls. And then I hit probably the craziest sanctified I've ever seen. So the implicit rarity went to 22. So it went positive. Obviously the fractured rarity stays at 25. The life is still in the range. The increased max life went +1. The rarity of the suffix went from 25 to 28, so it's positive. The cast speed went a little bit below, and then the big one is the plus level of all skills. So this is absolutely amazing, this amulet. It's giving me like 90 something rarity with all those rarities in there, and I don't think I'll be getting a better upgrade in that slot, but I literally sanctified 1, and the odds must be crazy on this. If you are going to try this yourself, don't expect to get one this good. If you actually wanted one this good, you probably have to do about 50. So yeah, I got really, really lucky with that. And I was not expecting it at all. But similar to the rings, except instead of corrupting it, you are sanctifying, because you really want that +4 to go to +5 with the Ritualist Ascendancy. Okay, and the other kind of really big purchase I did was the +3 Spark. Now, because we dropped the wand, we're losing a lot of spark levels. It is really nice to be able to get spark levels in other places. I had a +2 before. This was a ridiculous price. It's like 1,300 divines or something like that. But at this point in the build, I had the divines ready to go, so I just kind of bought it and sold my other one for about 600. So it was about 700 divines difference. I think I got it for 1,300. But it is allowing me to get the highest spark DPS. You definitely do not need a +3 though. +2 is fine. And if you don't have any, it doesn't really say on tooltip, but it probably would go down to about 650. You can get like a nice jewel for that one, like a bonus, just sapphire jewel. Or you can stick with it from nothing. It's up to you. And utilize these points a bit better. But they are the main kind of gear upgrades with the build. And you'll see, obviously at this point, the gear is pretty much min-max. I've got a couple of things to do. I could probably get a 2-socket helmet, 2-socket wrath pits. These are looking at about 1,000 divines each. I've looked at the combs. +3 combs with 1830 would probably cost you 10 mirrors to make with Hinakora's locks, because the base of the 3-socket 1500 is about 500 divines. Probably not going to go down that path. I may get one of these pieces, but I'm probably pretty done in terms of upgrades. I think this is pretty much at the max. Obviously, I could get rarity on the ring instead of int, but at this point, it's just getting a bit silly, and I'm pretty satisfied with how far I've pushed the gear on the build. As for my final thoughts, the Ritualist is insanely strong with a high budget. As you can see now, I've got multiple mirrors invested to the build, and I'm getting a lot of dividends from that. I'm getting movement speed, I'm getting a ton of rarity, I've got good damage still, and I've got explosions. It just feels absolutely amazing. I am probably going to be streaming this afternoon, so if you have any questions and you want to pop in stream and ask me them, or if you would like to just watch the build in action and maybe see how I juice some maps, feel free to join me on stream. And also make sure to subscribe for more future videos. Thanks for listening, guys.